Good morning or good afternoon for those on Eastern Time. I'm Hal Pepper from the Center for Profitable Agriculture. Thank you for joining us for the Tennessee Farmers Market Vendor Bootcamp webinar series. Our topic today is business planning basics, and we're glad to have you with us. And I'm glad to have Jared Bruin, also from the Center for Profitable Agriculture, co-hosting this session with me and helping me watch the chat box for your questions or comments. We greatly appreciate the support that's provided by USDA Rural Development, Tennessee Department of Agriculture, and the Tennessee Association of Farmers Markets to help make this series possible. As some of you know, we planned a series of Farmers Market Vendor Bootcamp workshops to present the topics that we're covering this week, and we had to cancel 3 of the 6 workshops because of the coronavirus. We're glad to have the technology available to present these topics as webinars. And to help report the impact of this webinar, we will ask you to complete a very brief online evaluation of the session at the end, and we'll provide the link to that evaluation near the end of the webinar today. Even if you have completed that webinar previous days this week, if you've completed that evaluation, please complete it again after the webinar today. Just a few housekeeping items. Please leave your microphone on mute and your video turned off during the session. If you haven't already, please type your name and location into the chat box to help us record attendance. Attendance at all 4 webinars this week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and today, will fulfill a Tennessee Ag Enhancement Program requirement in the agritourism, fruit and vegetable, and value-added producer diversification sectors. So if you want your attendance to be documented for TAEP, please type in your name as it appears on TDA's list. And if you're joining the session by phone, please let Erica Alexander at TDA know that you were on the phone for this webinar by emailing her at erica.alexander@tn.gov. So please feel free to use the chat box anytime during the session today, and Jared and I will be monitoring that chat box for your questions. We appreciate those and like to have that interaction while we're doing this. So just again to remind you, I am recording the session and we plan to post it online early next week in the event that you'd like to view it again or share it with somebody else. So if there's no questions at this time, we'll jump right into business planning basics. So what we're going to talk about today is just an introduction to business planning. We're going to talk about identifying values, reviewing your history and assessing your resources, and doing some strategic planning and evaluation. When we think about where to begin, we have an idea that we want to consider. It's also important to do a personal assessment to figure out, hey, you know, do I have the tools that I need? Do I have the resources I need? Do I have the characteristics of a successful entrepreneur? And then once we have those in place and we start to develop that idea more, then we develop a business plan and we want to have a marketing plan. And then there's constant evaluation as we implement that idea and make adjustments. So one question that we get asked sometimes is, do you have any assessment tools that you can suggest? And there's a personal evaluation exercise in the publication Agritourism in Focus. I'll give the link to that at the end of the presentation. But this comes directly from that, and there's 25 questions, and it's designed to help you figure out, you know, do you have the skill set or the disposition, the characteristics that are needed, and to be a successful entrepreneur. And you go through the list of 25 questions and you mark, hey, do you agree with that? Somewhat agree with it. somewhat disagree, or entirely disagree. And then there's a point value assigned to each one of those categories, and you total those up at the end. So there are questions like, I am a self-starter, I relate well with others, I enjoy being around people, I like to meet people, open my farm up to the public, and so forth, as you can look at those questions there. So basically, here are the other questions as part of that set. And just things that are really important to being a successful entrepreneur, being able to be flexible, being able to learn, being patient, having the experience that's needed, being able to adapt well to change, and so forth. So once you circled answers to all those statements, then you count the number of times that you circled each response, and you multiply that by a point value, as you can see, 4 points to each one you agree to, 3 to those that you somewhat agree, 2 those that you somewhat disagree, and 1 point to those that you disagree on. So once you complete the evaluation, then you total your points, and if you have below 75 points, you really don't have the characteristics that are similar to other individuals who have succeeded as entrepreneurs, and you may need to reconsider your idea. If you have 75 to 89 points, you have some characteristics that are similar to individuals that have succeeded as entrepreneurs. So you want to consider whether others involved in your operation are strong in those areas that are challenging to you. And the important thing is how you may not have all of the things that are needed to be successful, but you need to be able to get the people in place that shore up your weaknesses. If you have 90 to 100, then your personality and skills are similar to individuals that have succeeded as entrepreneurs. I would consider that really important in the very beginning as you consider an idea for direct marketing or value added. There is a primer for selecting new enterprises on your farm that University of Kentucky has there, and I've put the link for that on that slide. Also, the Building a Sustainable Business, a guide to developing a business plan for farms and rural businesses. That's a really good publication. It's fairly lengthy, but it's has some really good examples in that. You can read about other farming operations that decided to do some type of direct marketing or value added. And it provides templates for you as you go throughout the developing a business plan exercise, and gives you examples along the way of specific farms. It's a really good read, and I think most folks would find that very useful. You can get this online for free at the link that I've listed there, or you can pay for a copy of that as well. It's also available in a printed spiral bound publication. So when I first came to the Center for Profitable Agriculture 10 years ago, I wanted to know what really makes direct marketers or value-added producers successful. What is the secret to success? And I went and visited several farms early on, trying to identify what really is the secret. And I learned that it's a combination of things. It's having a strong financial position is really important to being successful. Having a long-term commitment to the idea or the enterprise that you're doing is important. And being able to connect with customers, learning how to connect with them and deliver the products that they need or want. Also being able to adjust to regulations. Just like we have the COVID-19 virus and we're all scrambling to figure out how we adjust to the changes that are now in place as to how we practice social distancing and proper hand washing and so many things that are important to success. Just have to be able to adjust to changes in regulations as they come along. It's inevitable. We're going to have regulatory changes, and we have to be able to adjust to those to stay in business. Having people and customer service skills, really important, and being able to produce quality products consistently. The first thing is to produce a good quality product and being able to produce that consistently the same way, and then being able to market that product. But we've got to have a good product to start with before we can market it. And then just being able to be a good manager, getting the skills that are needed if we don't already possess them, and being able to manage labor effectively, and being able to manage costs, as well as just the organizational aspects of the business. All of those are factors of success. There isn't just one thing that makes a business successful. It's really the ability to juggle all of those things. We have people that contact us at the center from time to time, and they want us to give them a list of successful enterprises that farmers have tried. And so we've given them a list. We've told them that there are folks who have raised cattle and gotten those slaughtered and processed at a USDA inspected facility, and they get a retail meat permit, and they follow all the rules and regulations with that. And they have been successful in retailing the meat from the animals they raise. We talk to producers who have been successful in developing a CSA, community supported agriculture, selling a box of produce that they have produced. And we've seen businesses succeed in that. We've seen people succeed with pumpkin patches and growing products on the farm that people come to purchase, having agritourism operations, pick your own operations, and making jelly or jam out of berries. All of those are examples of successful products and successful businesses. Many times that same person will ask us, well, okay, what have you seen that's not been successful? Because I want to avoid those. You've told me a good list here of things that have been successful. Which ones aren't? Well, unfortunately, it's the very same list. Just as we've said, we've seen farmers succeed with those businesses, we've seen other farmers that have not succeeded with those businesses. It's not usually the product. If you're looking for a secret and it being a specific product, it's probably not that. It's really the ability to juggle all of the things that we just mentioned and being able to manage a business successfully. We mentioned the importance of having a good quality product and being able to produce it consistently. But just because a producer can make a really good product or grow a really good product does not mean they'll be successful in marketing it. I worked with a producer one time that decided to started to build a greenhouse and raise plants in the greenhouse. And we did a lot of research. We visited other producers that were doing that, and we learned from them. Then the producer decided, okay, I'm going to build that greenhouse and I'm going to raise poinsettias. He raised some of the most beautiful poinsettias I had ever seen. Did an excellent job of controlling pests and having those poinsettias ready weeks before the Christmas holiday. But the problem was that 2 days before Christmas, he still had a ton of them on hand. So he wasn't as successful in tapping his markets as he had hoped to be. And many of you know that I grew up raising peaches in North Alabama, or working with my dad and mom raising peaches. And when my dad started raising them, he set up a roadside stand in front of our house and he put me in charge of it. I was probably 8 or 10 years old. And he had some large custom signs painted and put them on opposite ends of our front yard. And we had some beautiful peaches there at our home stand. But nobody stopped to buy them. He put me out there and said, you be there and you sell them for people, you sack them up. And the first day, nobody stopped. And Dad said, well, that's okay. You do it again tomorrow. And so I was out there the next day and nobody would stop. I did that for 3 or 4 days. And I think we sold maybe less than 10 baskets total in 3 or 4 days. We had a great product, but we weren't able to get folks to slow down and stop on that busy 2-lane road in front of our house. So we had to develop other markets and other locations. We had to develop a roadside stand in Pulaski, about 40 miles away. We went to a farmer's market in Huntsville that was like 30 miles away. We went to grocery stores. We had to develop markets for our product. And in some cases, it took several years to really develop a great market. So it's important to have a good product, but that's just part of it. So there are challenges to a value-added enterprise. There's all the challenges of producing a product. Getting the right variety, getting soil fertility right, controlling diseases, pests, fertilizing, irrigating, planting, cultivating, harvesting, labor, keeping records. All of that is part of the challenges with producing the product. But there are also the direct marketing challenges. Value-added enterprises add another dimension to management and operations. There are all the production issues, but there's also the processing, the packaging, the storage, the regulations, the marketing, the distribution, the customer service, and the additional labor that's required. So as we develop a business plan, we've got to be thinking about how we're going to address those issues as well. Here's a picture of my mom and me as we were headed to a roadside stand when I was, I guess, about 13 or so, or 14. I got my dad to let me take that picture, or he took it, but he was very particular. He would not let me take a picture just any day. He wanted to make sure that he had, a really good product to display. He wanted to have as much color on the fruit as possible. And my dad was a stickler for our truck had to always be clean. When he took the truck to market, it was going to be freshly washed. So he was very particular about the color and the size of the peaches that he produced and marketed. Businesses fail mainly for 3 reasons. They fail, first of all, because they run out of money. You must have access to capital, and you have to have the cash flow to pay your bills and make loan payments when they come due. Businesses also fail because the operator lacks the skills and the experience that are required. My dad didn't just jump into growing fruit without understanding what was involved with growing them. And when people came to talk to him about growing peaches, he would be very quick to explain there's a lot to it. There's a lot more than just picking them off the tree. He had a good VOAG teacher in high school that trained him on how to prune peach trees, and he stayed in contact with his local extension office for information about cultural practices and the recommended spray schedule, and he attended grower meetings to stay current. And having grown up on a farm himself and working in a plant for a few years, he understood the difference between being told what to do as an employee and taking responsibility as the owner of a business to make sure that things get done timely. Businesses also fail because they don't know or they fail to recognize what the customer wants. And then they aren't successful in connecting their products with the customer. So businesses fail because they lack the money, they lack management, and they lack marketing. But another reason that businesses fail is lacking the passion, the energy, the drive, the magic. You must have a burning desire to produce and market a product or service that your customers need or want. A successful entrepreneur gets pleasure out of seeing his customer satisfied. My mother, when she sold peaches at the farmer's market or at the roadside stand, she was delighted when a customer came back and told her how good our peaches were, whether they were just eating them fresh or if they were using them to make ice cream or if they were making a peach cobbler. And our customers could tell that she had the passion about her business. She honestly believed that our peaches were the best peaches on the planet. And I kind of, to myself, would kind of smile when she told our customers, "Hey, we've got great peaches. Our peaches are really, really good. You know, they're the best." And I would think, well, are they really? You know, or what? Well, she honestly believed it, and she would tell anybody that asked her, "Our peaches are the best." She had that magic, and my dad did too. The passion and the energy to make that business successful. If you're not excited about your product, your customers and your employees won't be either. So I asked the question, would you start out on a trip to a totally new location without taking a look at what you need to get there? You'd consult a map or look it up on Google Maps. You'd figure out how you're going to get there. A business plan helps you take a look at what you need to start and operate a business. And new or experienced business owners, regardless of their history or their current situation, can benefit from business planning. As an experienced producer, you might use a business plan to map out a transition from, say, growing something conventional to organic, or you might transition to expanding your operation to incorporate more family members or partners into your business. You might be looking to transfer or sell your business, or you might be looking to add value to your existing operation through product processing or direct sales or cooperative marketing. It's never too late to begin business planning. It really should be something that is ongoing. And I realize that the exercise of developing and writing a business plan is hard work, and it doesn't always bring the satisfaction that growing something does. It requires considerable thought, as well as a certain amount of research and good discipline to collect and organize the information that it contains. But it's valuable. It's important. So why would you write a business plan? Some good reasons for writing a business plan is that a business plan helps provide direction by forcing you to discuss where you want to take the business and define what you want out of it. A business plan provides structure to your thinking and helps you make sure that you've covered all the important areas. And a business plan prompts you to think about the future. And finally, a business plan will help you to communicate your idea, not only to lenders, but also to employees and potential employees, or suppliers and customers. And as a communication tool, a carefully developed plan will provide something that other people can react to. You can share your business plan with those that you trust and get their input and their criticisms that can really help you. You can use their insights to help you develop a more successful venture. I know from my own experience, I have wanted to purchase my parents' farm after they passed away and do something on it, some agritourism idea. And I thought long and hard about potential ideas. And I shared some of them with my wife. And she was very good at explaining, here's a weakness to that. Or have you thought about this? And bottom line is, I didn't develop any of those ideas because I could never come up with anything that really would answer all of her objections. So it's really helpful to get somebody that you trust and bounce ideas off of. And that's really one good reason for writing a business plan. And another thing that a business plan does is it makes you consider what business structure is right for your business. You may think that, hey, I want to be a sole proprietor and that's it. I want to call all the shots. Or you may think, well, I'm going to need to partner with somebody, so I want to have a partnership. Or you may think, for some reasons of limiting my liability, I may want to have an LLC. And I may have an LLC as a sole proprietor, or I may have an LLC with other partners. And I want to think about the pros and cons of each and make sure that I pick the right structure. Maybe I'm thinking about even incorporating, or maybe having a nonprofit. And so having a good business plan forces you to think about what's going to be the business structure and what really suits you and your goals and objectives. I've seen farmers write a business plan and use it to communicate with their lender that they've thought through how they will make their operation work. And that's really important because farming is risky and lenders want to know that you've planned carefully and that you have a backup plan. I've also seen the value of parents and children developing a business plan together. When I say children, I'm talking about adult children. It's important to explain to the next generation what's been tried before and what didn't work and why certain paths were chosen along the way. And just putting some of that down on paper is helpful to have that for future reference. Dr. David Cole says that 80% of Americans have no goals, and 16% of them have goals in mind, but they don't ever write them down. 4% write their goals down, and they make 9 times more money. That's what his research has shown. So have a written business plan. Don't just have it in your head, but write something down that you can share with others and get it critiqued. His research also shows that farm businesses that developed a business plan were 2 times more profitable, and producers who communicate are 21% more profitable. Business partners must communicate with each other. If you're in business with somebody, it's very important to have those communication skills, and they need to communicate about their short and their long-term goals. If you have got siblings that are in business with each other, they need to have honest discussions about whose kids want to return to the farm and manage the business and how they plan for that to be accomplished. Whose money is going to pay for that succeeding generation to work in the business? Will they be expected to generate profits themselves by adding another enterprise that will pay for them to be employed? Will they be expected to pay rent to the older generation? And what will the older generation need and expect from the business to fund their retirement? It's important to have these discussions early on so everybody's on the same page. Here's some data that shows that direct marketing is growing. Between 2012 and 2017, you can see that the number of Tennessee farms with direct sales to consumers increased, and the value of food products sold directly to consumers increased. Now, there's a little definition in there that needs to be considered. The data in 2017 are not directly comparable to 2012 or 2000 or other previous years, because sales of value-added products for human consumption were included in 2017, but they weren't included in previous years. But nonetheless, look at the value of farm products sold directly to consumers in 2017, according to the census data. Almost $35 million. Roughly a little over $9,000 in average sales per farm of farm products sold directly to consumers. So it's big business. Direct marketing is growing, and it's growing in Tennessee. You can see the number of Tennessee farms with agritourism and recreational service sales grew 4.5%, and the value of those sales grew 22%. So value-added, direct marketing, and agritourism, they're popular with Tennessee consumers, but they have specialized markets, and they come with unique challenges, risks, and opportunities. Business planning is an ongoing problem-solving process that can identify business challenges and opportunities that apply to your marketing, operations, human resources, and finances, and can help you develop strategic objectives to move your business beyond its current situation towards your future business vision. Let's talk a little bit about values. Values are standards or beliefs or qualities that we consider worthy of pursuing. Principles are qualities that are intrinsically valuable or desirable. Values represent an individual's highest priorities and influence business objectives. And values are more than a mere objective or goal. They impact how you achieve your goals. My dad decided early on that he would only sell peaches, apples, and tomatoes that he had grown. And his reasoning behind that was that he had control over his production and harvesting practices. And he wanted to be able to assure his customers that he had followed the recommended practices that Extension gave out, especially about spraying and waiting the proper length of time before harvesting after spraying. You know, if he had grown the peaches himself, he knew how they had been raised. If he purchased them from somebody else and resold them, he didn't know those things. He was honest with his customers about what he sprayed. And even 50 years ago, there were customers that did not want to buy fruit that had been sprayed. And Dad was fine with that. He explained what he had sprayed with and how long he had waited after he sprayed before he harvested. But he also recognized and appreciated that some people simply did not want to purchase fruit that had been sprayed. And that was fine. He was not going to change his story depending on the customer. But he knew that if he didn't stick to a rigorous spray schedule and follow it consistently, that his peaches might look good when he sold them, but they could develop brown rot within a day or two of the customer taking them home if he hadn't sprayed them properly. With proper spraying, they ought to last 4 or 5 days at least in most cases. And he wanted to make sure that his customers had, peaches that would last once they took them home. And there were some years that we didn't have any peaches to sell because of a late freeze that killed all the crop. And so we didn't go to the roadside stand, or we didn't go to the farmer's market. And when we didn't, that told our customers that we were really serious about selling only what we grew. So values reflect your viewpoint on life, how you carry out your actions, and they indicate what you find to be important. Okay, so I see a question that's been asked. Does the center have examples of business plans or templates that we can access to help with our planning? We don't really have any examples of business plans at our center, but the publication that I mentioned about building a sustainable business, it does. And it's available free online, or you can buy the printed version. And I'll give the link to that a little bit later on. But also, the University of Minnesota has a software called Ag Plan, and you can go online and use that for free. And it contains examples and templates of business plans as you write your business plan. So those are a couple of really good resources that can help you. I realize that one of the hardest things about writing a business plan is just getting started. Putting something down on paper, putting down sentences that describe your operation, that can be a challenge. But if you have something that's an example to go by while you're writing it, that can be really helpful. And I found those two resources to be extremely helpful. So hopefully, if you're in business with somebody else, say it's a sibling or somebody else, it's your business partner, hopefully your values are closely aligned with your business partners. It's important to also understand and recognize your business partner's tolerance for risk. You may want to look at that and consider the difference in generations. Many times younger folks are more inclined to take risk because they most of the time have more years ahead of them. And if things don't go well, they've got more time to make it up and to recover their losses. Folks getting close to retire generally don't tend to be as willing to take on risk. So you want to consider that and plan carefully. Sit down with those that are on your team, that are working in your business, and those who have ownership stakes in it, and consider their tolerance for risk. And also consider what's your motivation for taking on this enterprise. Is it profit? Is that your main motivator, or is that just one of several? Could be that you want to be your own boss, or you want to keep the farm in the family and you want to pass it down to future generations. Having written values and just putting them down on paper and sharing them, and then coming up with a mutually agreeable set of values can help resolve business disputes, which can become family disputes when you're working with family. And you want to avoid that if at all possible. Effective organizations have values that are clear, that are concise, they're shared with each other, those shared among the owners, and they're meaningful, and they're oriented so that everyone understands and can contribute. How do you define success? Your personal values, your economic values, your environmental values, and your community values all contribute to that. With my dad, defining success was clear. Our sole livelihood was from the farm, and success meant generating enough revenue to pay all the bills and to make the loan payments and to generate enough profit to support our family. That wasn't the only thing that defined success for my parents. One thing was having, in their mind, the best peaches they could possibly have so that they could say, we have the best peaches you can buy. And they taste great. And it was important to my dad to have a reputation for marketing the finest peaches possible and to be a good steward of the land. And it was also important to teach us younger workers how to work and how to feel a sense of accomplishment for a job well done. That was important to Dad too, and to Mom. And that defined success for them. there's a story about one employee that I'll try to tell quickly, but a good friend of mine, and he's told this story publicly too, so I don't feel too bad in telling it. But he was learning how to prune from my dad. And my dad showed him how to prune, and he would do his best to get the hang of it. Then my dad would come back and he would critique the tree that he had pruned. And he would explain, nope, you need to cut this here and this needs to be pruned back here. Let's keep the middle of the tree open so that we can let sunlight in. And we don't want the tree to get too tall. So we're going to have a maximum height at which we're going to let the branches grow and so on and so forth. And every time my friend would try that, my dad would come back and say, well, keep working at it, but you need to do this and you need to do that. So my friend decided after some of those instances that he was going to make sure that he got it just right. And so he went in there and he pruned that tree ridiculously. He pruned everything off of that tree so that there was hardly anything left. My dad came to him and said, where are my peaches? Because every bit of budwood was gone. And my friend said that entire summer, every time we would walk by or drive by that tree in the peach orchard and it was barren and all the other peach trees had fruit, he was reminded of the mistake that he had made. And it was a valuable lesson to him. And it showed my dad's patience with him and trying to teach him how to do that job properly. What my friend didn't realize is that he almost lost his job over that. But my dad decided to stick with him and say, he can learn, he can do that. And he did. So that's also part of defining success. It's not all about profit. It's important. And in many cases, it's the main thing that defines success, but there's more to it than that. So if you're developing a business plan with other team members, you want to ask the planning team members to take the values that they write down and share them with the group, and then develop a common set of values that are shared as a team. We've mentioned the importance of writing things down. Write down a brief history of your farm operation. How did you acquire the farm, and why did you? What did you plan to do with the farm? Or what did your grandparents have in mind when they purchased it? Why are you doing what you're doing today? What choices have shaped your current situation? What enterprises have you tried, or maybe the preceding generation tried? And who has provided training or mentoring? And what do you feel good about? You want to assess your resources and figure out what you've got. Assess your operation in terms of the 4 key management areas of marketing, operations, human resources, and finances. And in each management area, collect facts and figures that will help you evaluate your operation in terms of strengths and weaknesses or opportunities and threats. Strengths and weaknesses refer to factors that are internal to your business, and opportunities and threats refer to your business's external environment. As you assess your resources, think about what is the product that you're going to provide. Is it a commodity, or is it something that's processed, or is it, maybe it's a product you're going to wholesale and somebody else is going to sell it to the consumer, or maybe you're going to direct market it to the consumer yourself. You want to think about what markets you're serving. Who are your potential buyers and where are they located? Are they retailing or wholesaling? How many are your buyers wholesalers, or are your buyers the customer, the retail customer. How many potential customers are out there? And how many customers do you have in each segment, and how much will they buy? What are the unique characteristics of your products? When we sold our peaches, we would pick them fresh every morning, and then I'd come inside and get cleaned up, and we'd go to the roadside stand or the farmer's market. And we, as my dad said, he always wanted to make sure that we didn't sell any peaches that had spots on them, or that, that were misfigured. And so we would have them to the market by 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning. And my mom was an excellent cook, and she offered peach recipes to anybody who asked. That was one way that she distinguished our product. She was a resource that people could turn to say, how do I do this? How do I use these peaches? Can I freeze them? Can I can them? How do I do that? And my dad, if anybody wanted to travel with their peaches, somebody would come up and they'd say, these are great peaches. I'm traveling up north to see cousin so-and-so, and I want to show him what great peaches we have in Alabama. And so, my dad would say, well, the first thing is you want your peaches to be firm. You do not want them to be soft when you get them, because, you don't want them to get bruised easily. So my dad would pick a special basket for that person and would make arrangements ahead of time. And he would try to get as much color as possible on the fruit, but be sure they were firm. And he would tell them, okay, now I'm going to bring them to you in a basket, but you need to get them out of that basket and put them in a box where they don't have to sit on top of each other and potentially bruise, for the best travel. And so, that was part of connecting with the customer and giving them what they wanted and distinguishing our product, how you can go there and you can really get what you want. They will make sure that you get what you want. And folks would come back and talk to my mom, and they'd say, we want to get the peaches that we got when you were here last week, when we came to the market last week. And my mom might say, well, we're out of that variety. Varieties are only in 10 or 12 days. So we're out of that variety. And I know they were good, but the ones we've got today are even better. And that was true, because the later varieties tend to be sweeter and better. And she was telling them exactly right. These are going to be even better. So it's important to be able to distribute your products and figure out how you're going to do it. It's important to price your products appropriately, and think about, are you going to use direct marketing? Are you going to go to the farmer's market? A farmer's market may take more of your time and have greater transportation costs to get there and labor costs, somebody there at the market, but it may be the best way to make first contact with potential customers for on-farm sales later. And when you think about pricing your products, the prices you charge are influenced by production costs, and they're influenced by your competitors, what they're charging, and they're influenced by what your customers are willing to pay. Think about how you're going to promote your products. Social media, website, signage. I am amazed at how folks are able to capitalize off using social media. That's something we didn't have, obviously, 50 years ago. And just letting folks know what's in and where you're going to be with your product is so much easier with social media, and it can really help in promoting your products. Your market may change. You may have new competitors that enter. Other folks may see what you're doing and think, there's an opportunity for me. So you have to be thinking ahead to what if more folks are doing the same thing I'm doing? How am I going to keep and get more customers? Old rivals may be going out of business. So, and there are things to consider that, you know, there may be new products that are developed that may reduce demand for your product, or there may be some new research that allows you to make even some type of beneficial health claim for your product. But you have to be careful about that and not make claims that are not uh, that you can't make or that FDA regulates. Think about the physical resources that are available for your business. What land or buildings or structures or machinery and equipment or livestock, what do I have already on hand? And think about if there are any institutional restrictions on the use of physical resources. Are some resources already tied up with long-term leases to somebody else, or are there easements or conservation agreements that have to be honored? Think about the production systems that you're using or plan to use, whether it's crop rotations or the timing of operations, the machinery, the other inputs that are used, the quantity of production, how your production is going to be stored, possibly processed and delivered to the market. And think about management systems that are going to be in place to support your business. And being familiar with annual planning and analysis can be an invaluable asset for an operation that's poised to make a major change. Having regular meetings, having discussions with everyone involved in the operation, that's really important for successful management. People are an essential resource in any farm business. Those that plan and manage and do day-to-day work may well be the most important factor in determining a farm operation's success. And so the human resources base for your farm, that includes you and others in your family or household who contribute time and effort to the operation, and it includes full-time and part-time employees and possibly interns and consultants that you hire to provide specialized advice. So who's involved in your business? What roles do they play? And it's a good idea for each enterprise to list a brief description of the duties and responsibilities in which each individual is involved. And that can help identify enterprises that depend almost entirely on one person and people who may be overloaded and spread too thin. And you want to avoid that and think about, what if somebody gets sick? Or what if somebody decides to leave the operation? Who will step in to do the things that they were doing? What are your current family living expenses? We ask that question often when somebody comes to us and they want to consider getting into a value-added business. And the first thing we'll ask is, what are your current family living expenses, and how are you going to get the money to pay those expenses? Because many times when you start a new venture, it's a while before it makes a profit. So, if you and your family are relying on your farm business as your only source of income or as a major source of income, then your operation can only be sustainable in the long run if it provides enough income to meet your family's basic living expenses. So for most people, making a realistic estimate of your current family living expenses is the starting point for assessing the financial status of your current situation. Think about how well has your business performed in the past, and how strong is your current financial situation. And your ability to assess the past financial performance of your farm, it will depend on the financial information that you have available. If you've got access to detailed past financial information on your farm business, it may be very simple to do this analysis. You may be able just to lay the prior years side by side and do a trend analysis. But if you don't have access to much past financial information, you may be limited to just comparing information from past tax schedules. Unfortunately, most farm tax schedules are on a cash basis rather than accrual, and it's easy to underestimate financial progress or to get the wrong message just by looking at a Schedule F that's based on a cash basis. Because most farmers find ways to continuously push income forward if they have a tax liability. They may be consistently building inventories and pushing income forward to future years, and thus under-recognizing income on tax statements. So to analyze financial performance, you really need to measure profitability of the business, liquidity, solvency, repayment ability, and efficiency. And so you really want an income statement, you want a cash flow statement, a balance sheet, and a statement of owner's equity. You need good records with all of your income and expenses accounted for. And we mentioned risk and risk management. That's an important component of your farm business. Without it, uncontrolled risk and uncertainty, that reduces the reliability of financial projections, and it makes an analysis difficult. And unmanaged risk carries with it a high degree of stress for farm managers and their families. So in addition to personal, production, and market risk, you likely encounter legal and regulatory uncertainty too. So you want to think about how you can manage that risk. And by first of all, adapting generally accepted, the best farming practices, and putting those in place on your farm, good agricultural practices, and in some cases purchasing insurance to make sure that the risks you're wanting to manage are covered by that insurance. But it's also very important, if you're going to purchase insurance, be sure that what you buy really addresses the risk that you have, and be sure that your insurance agent understands how you're going to market your products and understands what risks you're trying to cover. So when my parents had a farm business, we had a money box. And when my parents passed away, I found the money box that we had used for years, tucked away in a closet, and I salvaged it and said, that's something I really want to keep. The point I'm trying to make with this picture is you want to account for all the sources of money flowing in the business and all the sources of money flowing out of the business. That's really the only way you can accurately analyze financial performance. So every day, at the end of the day, we would take all the money that was in the money box, whether it was from those sales at the farmer's market or the roadside stand, or if it was money that we had gotten from a grocery store that we had taken peaches to. All of that would be added up, kept a record of, and then deposited in the bank so that we knew exactly how much money had come in. And even if we used some of the cash to pay for gas in a vehicle, we would add that money that was no longer in the money box, but we had a receipt for the gas ticket in the money box. So we would add that as a sale, and then we would also add that expense for the gas as a separate expense. So by doing that, we really knew at the end of the year how much money had come from the operation and where it went. And most successful businesses that I've worked with over the years, that's the main question they want to know. They want to know how much money did the business make? They want to know where did all of the revenue come from and where did it go? And by having a good system in place to monitor that, then you can analyze the profitability of a business. So you want to develop a business plan, a business strategy, or business plan that incorporates a marketing strategy, the operations strategy, the human resources strategy, financial strategy, and then puts them all together for each enterprise as a whole farm strategy. You want to consider your markets that you're going to market your products. You're going to consider the competition, distribution and packaging, pricing of the product, how you'll promote it, managing inventories, and just overall management of the business, and develop a strategic marketing plan. That should be part of your business plan. You have to continuously monitor production and harvest timely to get a quality product to market. And you have to keep on top of regulations and policy changes. You need to attend workshops and webinars to stay abreast of changes in regulations and understand what resources and training are needed. What gaps are there, and how do we react to those gaps? How do we eliminate those gaps by getting the training or the resources that are needed? Provide the appropriate training for employees. And you want to buy or lease equipment that is the appropriate size and capacity for the input and output needed. If the equipment's too small for the job, you'll be working your head off trying to push more product through to produce the inventory of product that's needed. And if the equipment is too large for the task, then the process won't be efficient, and you may have trouble servicing the debt load on that piece of equipment. So you want to develop a sound plan as to who is going to do what in the operation, and make sure that you've got a good backup plan in case anybody gets sick or leaves. How to find the right employees is one of the toughest questions we're asked. And then once you find the right employee, how do you train them and retain them? And sometimes the farmer says, I just need one good person, but finding that one good person can be really hard. Some suggestions: if you're looking at younger people, get to know your VOAG teachers, get to know your TCAT or Tennessee College of Applied Technology teachers with kids that have those skills. Get to know your 4-H leaders, your extension agents. Ask them for leads. My dad, every year we would have, someone different helping us, because kids would age out. He would get kids at church. He would get kids I went to school with. We had some that lived on the property that their family helped us in the operation. But once they got old enough to get a good job, or to get maybe out of high school and moved away, then you were constantly having to find somebody else to take their place. So you just have to recognize that there's going to be turnover. And young people with strong work ethic and good communication skills are in hot demand. Would recommend that you prepare a written job application, and that you communicate what's going to be expected of the person that works for you, communicate the skills that are required, and then screen the people that apply, train them, review their performance with them, and reward them appropriately, and praise them for a job well done. And if it's possible, even develop incentives for if a job is done particularly well and timely. We mentioned managing risk. Diversification is one way to do that. Organizational structure, having the right business structure is important. Develop a good relationship with your banker, your lender. Explain what you plan to do, how much capital it's going to take. Make sure your lender is on board with you. And then if things don't go like you planned, stay in communication with your lender. Consider the risk that's associated with using credit cards to finance your operation. Credit cards may be easier to get than a loan from your lender, and the repayment terms may appear to be more favorable, but the debt can be easy to stack up on you and become a real burden, not to mention the high interest rates associated with them. So think strategically about your financial plan. Look down the road at the monthly and annual debt servicing that's going to be needed before taking on debt. So once you have all this together and you've thought about this with your business plan, put all the marketing, operations, human resources, and financing components together, and make sure the strategies that you develop are compatible as an integrated system. And then consider not only your direct costs, but also your overhead or fixed costs when planning. Profitability, that's the idea of being able to generate revenue that's greater than expenses. So you want to be sure that the amount of profit is going to be enough to repay the debt and provide needed living expenses. Liquidity, that's the idea of there being enough liquid assets in cash or products that are easily converted to cash to meet current obligations and bills as they come to you. Solvency is the idea of your net worth and your liabilities. What percentage of the business do you own? What percentage of the business do your lenders own? If your lenders own more of the business than you do, they're going to have more control than you do as to everything with your business and the future of it being able to continue. How much risk can you afford to take? How much risk are you willing to take? And then how can you manage that risk? Think about the transition period evaluation. How will you generate the cash flow that's needed during that transition period? What's your backup plan? If the transition period, that is before the business becomes profitable, what if that transition period extends further than you anticipated? If it takes longer for your business to make a profit than you're expecting, how will you address that? Choose the best whole farm strategy, working with your team as you plan, develop contingency plans, and develop the strategic planning section of your business plan. Then organize it, write it, implement it, monitoring it. Building a sustainable business. This is one publication that I mentioned that's available. The online version of this is free, and you can purchase the printed version at the link there, at the link. You can just Google building a sustainable business and find that as well. Some additional resources just to quickly mention here. Your local extension office is a great place to get help and information. The University of Tennessee Manage program, there are 9 area farm management specialist positions that these folks help you. They can help you with developing a business plan. They can help you with your record keeping. They're an excellent resources. Your tax dollars have already paid for them, and you want to use them and folks like us at our Center for Profitable Agriculture to help you. The Tennessee New Farmer Academy is a great resource, especially if you're new to farming, you're a beginning farmer. You can attend that series of several weeks classes, 6 to 8 weeks of classes, and learn by doing and working alongside other producers. Tennessee Small Business Development Centers is another good resource, especially as you develop value-added businesses, processing businesses. The University of Kentucky Center for Crop Diversification has some great resources on its website. And the Cornell Small Farms Program is another good resource, as is the Agricultural Marketing Resource Center. Okay, so let me kind of look here. I see that Jared has been responding to some of the questions in the chat, and I really appreciate that. One thing that's mentioned when we're discussing values, one was ag plan. I think the other one was the building a sustainable business. This one right here. And also the agritourism in focus has the personal assessment tool. So back up over here. So there's the link to the ag plan. And also this book, Farmer's Guide to Business Structures, is a really good resource. It's from SARE also. You can get it online for free, or you can pay for the printed version. But if you're looking to try to decide, okay, which business structure really makes the most sense for me, that book is written for farmers, and it's really good. Also, Dave Cole has several resources here at the Northwest Farm Credit Service under Business Tools at the top here. That's a really good resource, and those are updated periodically with changing market conditions. Also, the University of Tennessee has a market analysis that is done on key commodities, and there are weekly updates and pricing reports on those. Okay, so there's a question here about retail meat permit, and yes, if you're going to sell meat and you have to get a retail meat permit to sell that, you would take the animals and get them processed, slaughtered and processed at a USDA inspected facility. And you would, first of all, have applied with Tennessee Department of Agriculture to get a retail meat permit. They will come out and inspect your farm and see where you're going to store the meat, make sure that it's stored in a freezer separate from any personal use, and that you have a way to safely transport meat from the processing facility back to the farm, and then be able to transport it safely and securely to your market outlets. Mike Brown is the person to talk to about that. His email address is mike.f.brown@tn.gov. We've also got a publication that is online, and I'll try to look that up here shortly, or perhaps Jared can, on what's involved with retail and non-retail meat sales, so that you have a step-by-step instructions as to how to go about getting that retail meat permit. Okay, that's really all that I have today. We really appreciate everybody joining us, and appreciate your questions. And we would ask once again if you would complete the brief online evaluation form, and I'll try to type that into the chat box. Also, I'll give you Mike Brown's email address in case you want to contact him. See that Jared has put the link to the evaluation in the chat box. If you would please go online and take just a few minutes to complete that, even if you did one before. I'm going to look up the link here in just a moment for that publication.
Hal, I've got it right here. It's basic regulatory considerations for retail and non-retail meat sales.
Yeah, that's
TV
the one. Yeah,
Okay.
if you could share that with everybody, that'd be great. Thank you.
I'm going to save it to my computer and then share the file so people can download it
Okay.
directly from the chat box.
All right, great. Yeah, thank you all for joining us this week. It's been fun for us. We would love to have done these workshops in person, but this has been a good way to at least communicate with you through webinars. And hopefully we'll be able to do more workshops soon. But in the meantime, it's been fun to connect with so many of you today. Thank you.
Okay, for anyone interested, the PDF file that I just shared, PB 1829, is basic regulatory considerations for retail and non-retail meat sales in Tennessee, and it will guide you through getting a permit from TDA and the required inspections that you'll have to go through, as well as proper handling facilities and using a USDA inspected facility.